Paul Lafrance here, Stream of Consciousness series. In this video, we're going to be talking about rejecting expansion and embracing contraction. I know that sounds a little bit vague, but in the last video, we talked about living in pain of past and fear of future, and this was a beautiful tie-in. So I was talking about the books that I've been reading and just embracing this concept of being present and living in the now. What I also was studying and learning about through these years is just looking around at our world and understanding that so much around us, there's this manifestation of expansion and contraction. So whether it's, the freeze-thaw action of going from summer to winter, like ice to water, the tides moving in and out, just the very nature of the universe, scientists going, well, the universe was once expanding and now we think it's contracting. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to argue with you. But let's look a little bit closer. Let's look at our own bodies. Let's look at what happens to us. Our lungs expanding and contracting, our heart beating, expanding, contracting constantly. Just the very nature of going to sleep and awakening is an expansion and contraction factor. But where this tied into me was understanding that our lives are like this as well, as human beings living in this world, that we go through this beginning stage of life. And this ties into what I was saying earlier about the killing of the ego, this beginning stage of life, which is very much predominantly ego-based. Who am I? Who am I going to become? What's my success? What direction should I be taking? Everything is very I-based. I. But there's an eventuality that happens where we eventually, no matter how much success we've gained, we will eventually, all of us, enter into the contraction phase of life, which is just called, getting older, which in our culture is like, oh God. In other cultures, like the more intelligent ones, there's an embracing of old age. There's an embracing of becoming an elder, of being properly old, where they are, the matriarch or the patriarch of the village is held in high regard, as opposed to, often what we do. It's like, well, Granny's getting, to be old and annoying because we're going to shove her in a home. Like, it's just, don't get me started. But to understand what ends up happening during the contraction phase, many of us will call it the midlife crisis, where we discover that we have reached a stage of life where we're no longer as successful as we once were. We don't make as much money as we once did. We're not as physically fit as we were once able to be. Not as pretty or as handsome as we once were. And our impact on the world has decreased. And most of us fight this. We fight it on every level, from the physical, from the mental. We are fighting this movement into the contraction. But I believe that the embracing of the contraction stage of life, which is where it doesn't take much to look around and discover how many of the people that have just been like, that we look at and go, that person just seems calm and wise, and there's sage wisdom or whatever. They seem to have all embraced this period of contraction, where that's where the spiritual awakening seems to happen. When you stop fighting the expansion, the ego, and you accept just like the simplicity of the now and being present and just existing for today and not worrying about whether you're going to die tomorrow, not worrying about whether your health is going to hold out, spending less time in your mind. I'm telling you, these two topics could not have aligned more perfectly. Living in pain of past and fear of future, and rejecting expansion and embracing contraction. The wisest among us embrace contraction at a younger age than when the body just tells us. If I could, when I talk to my daughters now, I'm hoping that in the same way that my daughters understand this concept of controlling their thoughts 20 plus years before this was even a concept to me, I'm going, that makes me excited for them. How much further ahead will they be than I? And that's another part of contraction. Like, I hope that the next generation surpasses whatever the heck I know, that they blow past it, that they understand that the ego and all of our self just powering desire to be seen. Like, don't get me started on the whole social media world, where it's like every part of it is about the ego. It's like, look at me, look how much attention I'm getting. the more that I embrace contraction, the calmer I feel, the more peaceful I feel, and the more that I love doing stuff like this, where it's just going, I have no idea what's going to happen or when I'm going to die or whether I'm going to make more money. I don't care. But I can tell you, these past two topics have led me to feeling more calm and more peace and more connected than I ever have in my life. Again, another topic I can talk a long time about. But moving on. Okay, and now we are into... this is a good one. Again, these are kind of lining kind of perfectly. The next video will be, my grandfather was on Juno Beach, in our next video.